Hi, Gaye DeRusso with the Majestic Rider. So going to do a little podcast while this guy is eating some grass, so you'll hear him in the background. I want to talk to you about top-heavy riders. So that means riders that have bigger upper bodies. They might have a little bit of a belly or bigger breast, or just your top part is heavier than your bottom part. When you're riding, your balance is going to be a little bit different than the people who are not top heavy, and you have to compensate for some things. So when you're riding, if you're top heavy, you always want to keep that upper body back a little bit more than the other riders. And the reason for this is if that weight gets chucked forward because the horse trips or stumbles or something like that, you can actually knock the horse off its feet. But if you're back farther to start with, it will be easier to get your upper body back even more. But if you're just sitting upright or leaning forward, then it can tend to have your weight go forward very fast before you even know what's happening, and you can't catch yourself. You fall onto the horse's neck, and then it causes that horse to lose its balance because you threw it off balance. And then it starts tripping, and because you're laying on its neck, a lot of times it can't catch itself and get back up because of all that weight. And so it stumbles, falls, and then usually falls onto its side. So what you want to know is, as a top heavy rider, you do have to ride a little bit differently, especially out on the trails. And this is much more important on the trails than it is in the arena where there's soft footing. So when you're on the trails, kind of sit with your upper body a little bit behind the vertical. If you're on a horse that tends to trip, sit back even a little bit more if possible, and try to keep that horse's head kind of in a neutral position or a little bit higher, because it'll give you more time to catch yourself versus a horse that has its head very low. Horses tend to carry about 60% of their weight on their front and 40% on their back. Some of the gaited horses are top heavy themselves, especially the walkers, the Tennessee walking horses, and they'll have more weight on that front end. And so what we want to make sure is they don't get more weight on that front end. So we don't want their head too low, because that will cause a lot more weight to go on that front end. And we want them to kind of engage and use their back end more. Come on back over here, buddy. And we want them to use their balance if they do start to trip, but we have to stay out of the way for them in order to do that. So here's an example. There's somebody very thin on a horse, and the horse trips. They have very good balance, and they lean back as far as they can right when it happens, and they're quick with their movement, so they really get right out of that horse's way. They hold those reins tight. The horse is kind of trips, pushes on that bit as they're going down, and just pushing on that bit gives them something to be supportive with, and they push back. You got your weight out of the way, and they can get themselves back up, and the horse is fine. Everybody trips, horses trip, all animals trip. So what we're trying to do is help them if they do trip, because they're carrying us. Now another scenario is the horse is kind of top heavy itself. It's got all its weight on its front end. It's got its head down kind of by its knees. You're a little top heavy, not really paying attention, talking to your friends, and you're not very athletic. The horse trips. As it trips, you're not paying any attention. You get launched forward. Now you're on top of that horse's neck. Now that horse's head is going towards the ground. As it's going towards the ground, you can't catch your balance. You can't push yourself back up. So the horse that is now trying to catch itself is kind of stumbling forward like a drunk, and that weight just continues to knock it forward. It can't catch itself, so it stumbles and falls down. Now that could be the same exact horse, and one, it's the way the horse is being ridden. One keeps the horse's head a little bit higher, the other one has it lower. The one is a more active rider, more fit, athletic, and not much weight up on the top, so it doesn't knock the horse over. The other one is not paying attention, not very athletic, and it's a lot of weight chucking forward, so that knocks the horses off the feet. So think of it, if I threw like one of those medicine balls at you, and the medicine ball weighed 5 pounds. Even if you weren't paying attention, you might be like, oh, caught it. Oh, that was all right. And then if I threw a 20-pound medicine ball at you, you're not expecting it, you might be like, oh my God, and it hits you and it knocks you off your feet because you're not expecting it, you're not balanced, and that ball did not help you very much. So some of the problems with these horses are that we're top heavy, we're not a very good rider, we don't ride all the time, so we don't have very good balance. We're expecting the horse to do everything for us, and they might if we rode them more correctly, but it's two bad things happening. It's the horse being heavy on its front end, and then it's the person riding the horse being heavy on its front end. And other things that happen when you're not a good rider is you don't make the horse pay attention. You're just kind of sitting there being a passenger. And so the horse starts spacing out and it starts tripping on rocks and just not paying attention to what it's doing because it's following the horse in front of it. And as it follows this horse in front of it, because you're not riding very well, you start to get closer and then the horse can't see the rocks or the footing at all. And so the horse tends to trip. These are all just normal riding things that happen. So you want to make sure if you're top heavy, you always sit back pretty darn far. You always make sure that horse is paying attention. Don't let its head get too low. Don't let it go down to its knees. The lowest you want it is maybe chest level, okay? And you want to be paying attention to the footing. You're going downhill somewhere rocky, or you think that horse is not paying attention, sit back even more. Hardly anybody falls off leaning back. And I've seen horses trip, plow into the ground, knees, head, and the rider leaned back as far as they could, got their head on that horse's tail. I mean, they leaned back. Horse just gets up. They didn't fall over. You have to know these things can happen with riding, and gaited horses tend to drag their feet more. So if you're very top heavy and you're like, I am not going to do any of those things you're saying, Gaye. I'm going to sit up there, I'm going to space out, I'm just going to follow my friends, be a passenger, and I want to have a great time. Then this is what you need to do. You get a very well-balanced horse. You get a horse that pays attention, a horse that is not top heavy, one that does not drag its feet, maybe more on the trotty side, so it picks its feet up higher, and it's athletic. Okay? And you don't want it to be too quiet, because it's the ones that are too quiet, very dull, don't spook at anything. Those are the ones that tend to not jump up as quick when they do stumble, because everything they do is a little bit slow and nonchalantly. Okay, and although they make great non-spooky horses, they're not good for people who have really bad balance if they tend to drag their feet, because then they tend to trip more. The pacey horses drag their feet a lot more than the trotty horses, but any horse can drag its feet if it's lazy. But that's why I say get a trotty horse, not a pacey horse, if you're not going to ride well, because you want to make sure that horse stays sure-footed. Now, it might not be a big deal if you have flat terrain. The only thing you'd have to worry about there is holes. Horses don't see holes, so you need to steer around them. They don't see like we see, so help them. Don't ride them right into a hole, because they probably won't see it and they'll step right in it and fall down. But if it's flat footing, it's probably not as important. But if you need to climb, go over obstacles, up and down hills, you need a horse that can handle that terrain and help you to be balanced if you're not balanced. So there are many top heavy people that ride really, really well. They would never knock a horse off their feet, okay? And you don't need to be very muscular to be able to ride well. You just have to have good balance. So sure, can you be overweight? Sure can. I've seen lots of overweight people ride very well, ride better than some of the people that are skinny. You just have to know what to do with your body, practice it, and everybody has a chair in their house. So you practice the scenarios. You're riding, the horse trips, you lean back as far as you can. You're riding, the horse stumbles a little bit because the footing's too narrow and it goes up on the side. You freeze, hold yourself, lean back a little bit, get your weight out of the way. You're trying to do things to help the horse, not impede what it's trying to do for you. But I've seen many times people say the horse is a tripper and it's a problem. I watch them ride and I go, it's not the horse, it's you. But let me ride the horse and see. I ride the horse on the same darn footing, make sure the horse is paying attention, it's balanced. I'm sitting back, horse never trips. They get on, ride up on the horse in front of them. They're not paying attention, the horse is not paying attention. It's pretty much going on remote. Can't see where it's putting its feet, catches a rock, it trips. They lose their balance, fall right on top of that horse's neck, knock that horse over, and then they label him a tripper. So hopefully you see the difference there. It's not the horse that's the tripper. It's the rider not helping the horse and making the job much more difficult. I'm going to give you one more scenario to entertain you. You're just walking and you're carrying your friend. You're giving him a piggyback ride, okay? And as you're carrying them, you're not great at this. You haven't done it a lot before. But you're doing it. You're carrying them up and down the hills. As you're walking with them, they're staying very still. They're trying to balance themselves and help you. And you're like, well, this is hard, but it's not that hard. I can do this. Now, your friends start swinging their legs back and forth as you're trying to walk in a straight line and keep yourself balanced down that trail. It becomes much harder. Try it if you haven't. They start swinging their legs. You start kind of wobbling back and forth. You're like, this is kind of hard. I got to counterbalance everything she's doing up there, and I'm kind of getting pissed. She's making this really hard. I'm trying to carry her home on this trail. Now she's wobbling around up there, and you're trying to keep your feet straight. A rock comes up, and you're trying to hold her, and you're like, oh my God, there's a rock. And you pick up your foot, but it's just not high enough. You catch your toe on that rock. When you catch your toe on that rock, she falls forward, hits you in the head with her head, and now she's really kind of on top of you, falling more, and you start stumbling. As you start stumbling, you start running forward because you're trying to catch your balance. As you're running forward, you hit another rock, which then makes her fall forward more, and you trip more. And then, boom, both of you go down. Now, was that your fault? Or was that the rider's fault? Your friend. One that was swinging their legs, not paying attention, and knocked you off balance. In my opinion, it was your friend. All right, so you top-heavy riders, remember, you can ride well. Doesn't matter if you have a big belly, big chest, big muscles on top. You can ride well. You just got to help control your weight, balance yourself, keep that horse paying attention, keep that horse balanced, and have a fun trail ride.